This program is provided by Universal Genesis.
So we're looking at a source today that basically accuses G.W.F. Hegel, the giant of German philosophy, of pulling his punches.
That's a good way to put it. We all know the standard story, right? The Hegel story is the story of the West.
Right. It's this march of reason, from the Greeks through the Reformation, all landing perfectly in the modern rational state. It's our operating system.
It is. It's comforting. It tells us we're all getting smarter and better organized. But this source, 119, Another Philosophy of History, it makes a fascinating claim. It says that's not the only story Hegel could have told.
It's not the one he wanted to tell, even.
Maybe not. The source argues he left a completely different version on the cutting room floor.
A version that just flips the whole script. Instead of the triumph of reason, it's a history of faith.
Exactly. And the wild thing is, this alternate version might actually explain the mindset of a 19th century German better than Hegel's official book does.
So why bury it? Why would the heavyweight champ hide his best work?
Well, that's the mystery, isn't it? Today, we're going on a conceptual experiment. We're reconstructing this what-if narrative. Same facts, same dates, but a totally different editorial lens.
And through this lens, the heroes are villains, the failures are successes.
And the so-called Dark Ages suddenly look like the peak of civilization.
Okay, before we get to the timeline where Aristotle is the bad guy, which I still need you to walk me through, we have to set up the rules. The source says history isn't just one thing. It has layers.
Yes, and this is the key. You have to see the layers. Layer 1 is what it calls chronological fact, the year table.
The undeniable stuff. Napoleon, 1804. Luther, 1517. You can't touch it.
You can't touch it. That's the bedrock. But on top of that is layer 2, experiential history.
Which is how it actually felt to be alive then.
It's the vibe, but deeper. It's the terror, the hope, the confusion. When the Reformation happened, did people feel, oh, wonderful, the progress of reason is liberating me?
No, they were terrified. They were worried about hellfire.
Exactly. They felt the ground shaking. We look back and see progress, but they looked around and saw chaos.
Okay, so that's the lived reality.
And that brings us to layer 3, history as hope. This is the edit. This is where a society organizes the facts and the feelings to tell a story about who it wants to be.
So Hegel's famous history was an edit.
A very specific edit designed to justify the modern rational state he wanted to see. But today, we're looking at the other edit.
The one that prioritizes that messy, emotional, faithful, experiential layer.
We're going to explore a history where the hero isn't the rational mind, but the repentant soul.
So if we're editing for the repentant soul, the origin story has to change. Textbooks say the West starts in Athens. Socrates, Plato, logic.
That's the reason edit. In this alternative history, the West doesn't begin in Athens at all.
Where then?
It begins in Jerusalem.
Israel.
Think about it. For over 1,000 years, the spiritual home for most Europeans wasn't the Parthenon, it was the Bible. And the key figure who makes this happen is St. Augustine.
I know him from his Confessions, but the source says he's more like a translator.
But not of language. He translates a whole narrative structure. The Jewish history in the Old Testament is about the Exodus, right? A specific people physically leaving Egypt.
A literal geographic journey.
Right. What Augustine does is he takes that structure and he interiorizes it. He turns it into a metaphor for the soul.
So slavery isn't being in Egypt, it's sin.
And the desert isn't sand, it's our wandering life on earth. The promised land isn't a place, it's the peace of God.
So he basically democratized it. You don't have to be from a certain tribe to be chosen.
You just have to be repentant. You have to realize you're lost in the desert. That creates a whole Western identity based on confession and waiting.
It's not about getting smarter, it's about getting holier.
Exactly. But this creates a huge point of friction. If Jerusalem is the start and the inner soul is the hero, what do you do with Greece, with Aristotle?
This is where it gets weird. Because in the standard story, rediscovering Aristotle is a huge upgrade. The lights come back on in Europe.
It's the Renaissance, right? The end of the Dark Ages.
But in this version, Aristotle isn't the hero.
He's the villain.
Hang on, Aristotle. The foundation of logic, of science? How can he possibly be the bad guy?
Because we're looking at it from the experiential layer, remember? Think like a pious 12th century monk. Your entire world is built on faith, on mystery. Then this intruder shows up.
And the intruder is?
Logic.
The intruder is a rival system of truth. Aristotle comes in and says, hey, we can actually explain the stars and the animals without referring to God's mysterious plan. For the faithful, that wasn't liberating.
It was threatening.
It brought confusion and doubt. It was tearing the roof off their house. And this conflict, this Aristotelian intrusion, becomes the test. It becomes the scorecard for judging the nations of Europe.
Okay, this is the part of the notes that really blew my mind. The scorecard. The moral ranking of England, France, and Germany is... It's basically the opposite of what we're used to.
Completely inverted. Let's start with England. In the standard history, they're the model. Industrial Revolution, empiricism, stability.
But in this spiritual history, they are the fallen.
The fallen. Why?
Because they gave in to the Aristotelian mindset too easily. They embraced natural science, utility, pragmatism.
They chose nature over God.
They asked, how can we use the world? Not, what does the world mean for my soul? So in this telling, they sold their spiritual birthright for a steam engine.
Their greatest success becomes their greatest spiritual failure. Okay, so England fails. What about France?
France fails by trying to make the state into God. The source calls it self-legislation.
So the French Revolution.
Exactly. Robespierre, the law. They tried to build a perfect society based on human reason alone. The state decides what is good and evil.
Which, in the Augustinian worldview, is the ultimate sin. It's blasphemy.
You're trying to build heaven on earth, which always ends up creating hell on earth.
So England chases comfort, France chases power.
Yeah.
Which leaves Germany as the hero of this story.
The universal nation.
But why? Germany had scientists and philosophers. How do they get to claim the high ground?
It's a very subtle argument. Germany didn't reject reason. That would be foolish. The source says they tamed it.
Tamed it, like put a leash on it.
Kind of. They treated reason as a soldier in service to faith. While France had a political revolution and England had an industrial one, Germany's revolution was the Reformation. It was internal, about the soul.
So they claim to be the perfected state, not because they're the most powerful, but because they kept that tension alive.
Correct. They didn't let science kill God, like England, or the state replace God, like France. They held the two together. For them, true freedom wasn't wealth or political liberty. It was the soul finding God.
And that idea of tension being a good thing, that brings us to the Holy Roman Empire.
GHRE.
We all know the joke, right? Neither holy nor Roman nor an empire. It's always presented as this messy, failed state.
A disaster. Especially when you compare it to unified France or England. That's the modern political judgment where efficiency is everything.
But not here.
If you put on your Augustinian glasses, the Holy Roman Empire is maybe the greatest political achievement in European history.
Okay, you have to explain that. How is a mess a success?
Because in Augustine's world, the city of God and the earthly city must stay separate. No earthly state is supposed to be perfect. If it becomes too powerful, too unified, it's trying to become an idol.
So the fact that it was a weak, fragmented patchwork.
That was the feature, not the bug. Its messiness was proof of its faithfulness. It refused to merge God and state. It was a political system that was honest about human limitation.
Wow. So its inefficiency was actually its humility.
It was a perfectly imperfect state, which is the only kind of state a true Christian can have on this earth.
Okay, but there's still a giant elephant in the room here. Science. I mean, eventually, Copernicus and Galileo just, they win. The facts are the facts. You can't just humility your way out of that.
You're right, and the source has a very clever defense for this. It's the astronomy versus theology argument.
How does that work?
Okay, so for centuries, the church used Aristotle's model of the universe. Then Galileo proves it wrong. In the standard history, that's a huge blow to the church's credibility.
Right, religion backed the wrong horse.
But this alternative history says, no. When Aristotle gets astronomy wrong, that is the fault of philosophy.
Philosophy's fault.
Yes, because philosophy and science are trying to explain nature. And theories of nature are supposed to get updated. So if your science is wrong, you fire the philosopher and get a better one.
And theology just sits there, untouched by all this.
Because theology isn't a theory of nature, it's a theory of the soul. So the source argues that when the science changes, theology isn't wrong. It was never even playing that game.
It sounds a little bit like a loophole. Like, oh, sorry, that wasn't my department.
It is a loophole, but it's a brilliant one. It allows this narrative to say, our science was wrong, so we fixed it. Our God was never wrong. It protects faith by building a firewall between spiritual truth and natural truth.
So let's pull this all together. We have a history that starts in Jerusalem, champions Germany as the protector of the inner life, and even redeems the Holy Roman Empire. It's coherent, it's powerful, and it probably felt very true to a lot of Germans at the time.
It was much closer to their lived reality, for sure.
So we come back to the big question. Why didn't Hegel publish this? Why did he give us the triumph of reason instead?
Because of that third layer, hope. Hegel needed a story that was useful for the modern state he saw emerging, for the Prussian bureaucracy, for universities, for a unified legal code.
And this story of faith and humility, it just wasn't useful for that project.
It's politically useless. You can't run a modern government on repentance. You run it on reason. You run it on predictable laws and progress.
So he made an editorial choice. He sacrificed the truth of how people felt for the utility of the future he wanted.
He was building a platform. He chose the Greek reason edit because he hoped for a rational state. He needed a history that proved the state was the end goal of all human striving.
And that's the big insight here, isn't it? History isn't just a record of what happened. It's what a society hopes it is.
Hope is the editor. That is the core takeaway. We think of history as a judge, but it's really a mirror. It reflects our own values back at us.
Which leads to the final, really uncomfortable question for us today. If history changes based on what we hope for, what kind of history are we writing right now?
That's the scary question. When future generations look back at our time, this chaotic, digital, polarized moment, what edit will they see? What are we telling them to hope for?
Are we editing our lives for reason, for efficiency in tech? Or are we editing for power? Or for something else entirely?
Every time we decide what story matters, what to pay attention to, we're doing exactly what Hegel did. We're choosing a past to justify a future.
The source material really leaves you with the idea that we are all historians. And the story we tell ourselves about ourselves, well, that determines where we all go next.
We are always editing. The only question is, what is your hope?
Something to think about. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
Until next time.
This program is provided by Universal Genesis.